Good afternoon, or good morning, as the case may be. I'm Mona Hilton, the CEO of Advantage Anywhere, and I'm coming to you live from beautiful Southwest Florida, where it's actually raining liquid sunshine right now. Welcome to this live senior living panel discussion on how to thrive during and after a crisis with our expert panel of senior living providers and consultants. We're so happy to have you here today. Now, before I introduce you to our panel of experts, I want to let you know who we are and why we're hosting this live event. It has been our honor to serve senior living for over 11 years now with Advantage Anywhere. And we're super excited to announce our brand new, completely redesigned 2021 version of Advantage Anywhere that addresses today's most pressing senior living issues head on, which is attracting, engaging, nurturing, and converting leads to move-ins. So if you haven't seen Advantage Anywhere in the last 6 months or so, you're in for a real game changer. Timing couldn't be better to help senior living providers build what we need most right now, which is census, by generating new leads and advancing them through the sales process. We are more committed than ever to helping the senior living industry thrive in any economy, which is why we wanted to host this panel again this year. Now, today's webinar is actually a follow-up to how to thrive during a crisis panel discussion that was recorded live a year ago in June 2020. Your feedback was so positive, and you expressed such interest in our panelists last year. Actually, some of you reached out asking for a follow-up to find out what's the latest, how's everyone doing a year later. So we've asked our original panelists and some new ones to come once again and share their perspective 1 year later. We are so very grateful for our panelists and their willingness to share of their time. Some of them have sacrificed and are traveling, and just to be transparent and sharing what they're going through, what they've learned, how they're adapting moving forward. I will tell you that today's panelists represent the spectrum of senior living. We've got senior living providers here with services from independent living, assisted living, all the way to hospice services. We've got a management company, we've got a marketing company, and we've got a consultant. They also represent different states and different geographies, coast to coast, who've experienced different levels of lockdown and spikes. So wherever you are, whatever you offer, you're going to get a well-rounded perspective today, an insight that is sure to resonate with you. So with that, it's my honor to introduce to you today's expert panelists. Our first panelist is Diane Kenny. Diane is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Goodman Group. They're based out of Minnesota, but they have communities from Florida to California, and especially in the Midwest United States. We're very happy to have Diane this year. She wasn't able to make it due to a scheduling conflict, and she's made a real sacrifice to be here. So thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
We've also got with us today, Krista Daniello. Krista is the Vice President for the Osborne. It is a beautiful, large nonprofit in Rye, New York. The Osborne offers a full range of senior living care and options from independent living all the way to home care. Also from the Osborne, we have Richard Scaglio. Richard is the Vice President of Marketing at the Osborne, and he's responsible for all the messaging that comes out of the Osborne. So you can only imagine what the last 18 months have been like for him. Also today on our panel, we have returning Frank Turner. Frank is the president and owner of Turner Senior Solutions. Frank works with senior living communities throughout Tennessee and Georgia, and we're so happy that you're able to come back again today, Frank. Also returning is Peggy Scoggins. Peggy is the owner of Adept Selling. Peggy works with senior living clients across the United States, from Florida all the way to California. Currently, she's working with providers in Ohio, Iowa, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin. So you can imagine what she's seen. Also, last but not least, we're also so happy to welcome Jerry Gadd. He's new this year. Jerry is a managing partner at Hamlin Senior Marketing. Hamlin is based in New Jersey, but they've got clients all over the country. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've also have our very own Kristen Zay. Kristen is the Vice President of Operations here at Advantage Anywhere. She runs the client coaching, the operations teams, and she works with senior living clients coast to coast. She too is based right here in sunny Southwest Florida. As in last year, Kristen will be our moderator for today's panel discussion. Last but not least, we also have Lance Armstrong. He's behind the scenes today. He is our client success manager and he runs our account management team. He'll be running our tech for today's panel. So in the next 15 minutes or so, you'll be hearing directly from our panel of experts as they field the questions that you probably are thinking. We have a limited amount of time. So if you have any additional questions and we have time, we'll get to them. If not, put them in the chat anyway, and we'll get back to you with the appropriate panelists to answer your questions. So without further ado, let's hand it off to our moderator. Kristen?
Thank you, Mona. As Mona mentioned, I'll be moderating the questions to our panelists today. As we dive in, I'm going to ask that for question number 1, we're going to give each panelist an opportunity to answer that and go from there. So we will start with Diane from the Goodman Group. And here is the first question. Where are you now as it relates to the pandemic? Are you still in lockdown? Are things loosening up? Are things back to normal? Or are you still seeing any of those effects? So number 1 to Diane.
Thanks, Kristen. Can everyone hear me? So basically, I'll just a little bit about the Goodman Group. We operate 38 senior living communities in 8 states. So we have a broad portfolio, and our focus right now is our assisted living facilities of IL, AL, and memory care. Our SNFs are bouncing back, but to be quite honest, we are in recovery. We took a hit during COVID for the last 15 months, like everyone did. We consider ourselves to be in ramp up. Our goal is net incremental gains each month as we build back up to budget in all of our managed communities. We have seen an increase in inquiries. We're seeing an increase in move-ins. We're very positive right now, but we still operate in some states that are under executive order. I don't know if any of you are in the Oregon market, but if you have one case on site, it shuts down all of your admissions. So we're still in COVID, we're coming out of it, but that's kind of where we are as far as a sales perspective. The number 1 issue for our company, and I think I speak for all of us, is staffing. Staffing is a huge issue, and that can affect our ability to take admissions and move our sales forward. But one thing I have to say, I'm going to put a plug in here for Occupancy Advantage, is our teams are heavily engaged in tracking everything in our CRM, real time, every day. We get reports. It keeps us right on track. So kudos, Kristen, to you and Mona and your team for helping us basically build our business again.
Thank you, Diane.
I want to ditto, Diane, what you said, because I think people in our industry don't always realize the importance of the CRM. And I think more than ever, we realized that during COVID, because everybody was home, and what was your messaging at that point? How were you keeping track? So, that was extremely important for us. And I think that we're in recovery mode, right, Richard? We're in New York. So if anybody knows anything about New York, we're one of the most regulated states that there are. Doesn't matter what the Department of Health says, doesn't matter what anybody says. They're going to do what they want. But right now we are absolutely in recovery. It depends on what level of care, to be quite honest with you, as far as what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. But right now things are finally starting to loosen up, and we're seeing more leads come in, and we're seeing more move-ins.
I would ditto that as well. I think any provider that offers a range of services, we're a continuing care community. So we're juggling a lot of different types of regulations, sort of, that are very different from independent living to skilled nursing. So we're working through a lot of those. We are fortunate enough that our infection rate is really very, very low. It's the lowest it's ever been. And our executive orders in New York expired on Monday. So we are looking forward to a fully operational campus beginning this week.
Good timing.
Well, I represent primarily in Tennessee at this moment, and we're pretty much back to normal when it concerns concerning being open or not. We're certainly in a recovery mode as well, but we are, of course, now inviting guests in, and we're finally touring people. We've put in a digital kiosk for screening at the front, and we're still doing some wellness checks, those type of things, but we're getting back to normal. The residents they got smiling faces on them. They're carrying smiling faces now, and that's a really nice thing to be able to see. So, but we're certainly in a recovery, and I will ditto what has also been said about the importance of what Occupancy Advantage is bringing to us. I know they have just been partners with us doing this whole thing, and they're certainly more and more involved now that we're trying to rebuild occupancy. So it's really been a good partnership, and we thank them for that. They do an awesome job. They go far, far beyond what normal people would expect anyway.
I would agree with everything that the other panelists have said in terms of, our experience with the clients that we're working with right now. I think one critical factor is the level of care and what restrictions are surrounding some of those. But in terms of CCRC, independent living, we're certainly seeing a lot more relaxed approach to allowing people to visit in the buildings, tours, etc. It's interesting because some of the obstacles I think we run into is making sure that the communities are ready for tours. Because for a long period of time, folks weren't coming into the building and seeing things.
Right.
And we've had to work closely with our clients to make sure that our communities are tour ready. But I'd like to also underscore the comments that were made about the importance of the CRM and the ability to track information and leads, because that's just been such a critical component of picking up sort of where we left off with people. And while we've attempted to keep them warm throughout the process over the last 15 or 18 months, the CRM and documenting that information has been critical to picking them up now and moving them through the process. So I would underscore that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to what Jerry said. When it came to the different levels of care, there obviously was different levels of restrictions that were implemented and taken away depending on if it was IL, AL. And one of the things that we noticed is there's been a big push in, probably the last decade to create these buildings that had this fluid care level, the IL, AL combination, the flexing, if you will. And that was sometimes a detriment because people didn't want to move in, because when you were in that flexible model, you were regulated by the most restrictive requirements or restrictions. And so there was a little bit of learning there in terms of that separation of IL and having that being able to function a little more freely than the IL-AL combination model. And it was just, something that I don't think we anticipated, but you have to kind of manage. And then the other thing I think that's really encouraging right now as we're thinking about what we're seeing now, just reported when we look at June's consumer confidence index. We hit a all-time low last May of 2020. And May of 2021, if you follow that, that's now above the 100 point, which means consumers are confident. They are coming back out and they're more willing to, go into the whatever it is, purchasing, senior living. And so I think that's encouraging for us to see that index shoot back up above 100.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We see the same thing. There's a lot of confidence in the market.
Mm-hmm.
The next question I have is, in your opinion, and we've kind of touched on this, so it can probably be rather quick because some of you already covered a portion of this, but in your opinion, how close are you to getting back to normal pre-pandemic, or will we ever get back to the pre-pandemic normal?
Does that have to do with the permanent changes, Kristen, that you're asking about?
Yes.
I mean, you know, obviously, I think one of the big takeaways, there's a couple things that we learned that are important. We're very vulnerable. That's number one. Number two, for us, you know, the safety and the needs of the staff and the residents have to come above the profits, right? So I think we've all made really difficult decisions that are permanent decisions that do affect us as a community. For us specifically, one of the most difficult decisions we made, but I think one of the best decisions we made, is to make the vaccine a condition of employment. Now, you know, a lot of people went back and forth, and we were actually one of the first communities to actually do this. And, you know, that's something that's not going to change. Now, that's a positive and it's a negative. It's positive because when our prospects are coming in, we can tell them confidently that we are vaccinated. You know, our staff has been vaccinated. There's those few that have to make those true requirements from the Department of Health. But sincerely, we did lose a few of our existing staff, and it may be a little bit more difficult to get on the hiring side, but we haven't seen it as much. But we really felt like this was the most important decision we could make to let our residents know and the prospects know this is how seriously, you know, we are taking this. And the other permanent thing that we've done is, and I can't remember, Frank, I think mentioned it, but is we have a kiosk as well. And I don't see that leaving anytime soon. We're still going to continue to monitor people, because now that, you know, you don't always have to show a vaccine card when you're coming in, things are opening up, we still want to keep people as safe as possible. So to me, those are the two most important permanent things that we've decided on that were both positive and negative.
And I would say on the sell side, one of the things that I don't think is going away is our ability to communicate and connect virtually. And this was, I think, a bright side. Although it was challenging, we now are able to connect with family members who typically weren't part of the search process just because of logistics and locations. And I just don't think that's going away. I think it's actually going to improve more and more, because now everybody's more comfortable with it at all age groups. And so I think that's here to stay.
Yep.
I agree, Peggy. I actually feel like that ability to connect with people it's enhanced the sales process, and as you said, it's enabled us to include people who might not have otherwise been able to be included. And that's an overall good feeling when you can, through the sales process, include other family members who want to be a part of the process but maybe live further away and can't be there. And it's also just overall enhanced, you know, the ability to carry the message forward almost in an in-person way. And so, yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely not going away. And if it's used in a good way, it can really enhance the sales experience.
I agree, Jerry. Yeah, our teams now are almost adept at using a digital visual format platform for doing tours. They're doing face-to-face meetings on a digital platform like a Zoom, a WebEx, FaceTime. They're learning multiple virtual platforms to connect with people. And I think that that's just going to enhance our reach to people, like you guys both said, and connect on the sales process.
I know, Richard, you were talking about specific things that we had done with regard to that as well.
Well, one of the things that I look at in, you know, overall, regardless of what the subject matter is our approach to communication. And some of you have already touched on it, you know, the sort of the platform that we use, but our messaging, our approach to messaging has changed indefinitely, I believe. The Osborne took a very transparent approach to delivering news to whether it be prospects, our staff, our residents, their extended families, as Jerry referred to, people that are feeling out of the loop because they're out of the area, but they still want to know what's happening with their families. To the point where, we may have over communicated even when the news was not so good. I mean, we're in New York, just outside of New York City, Westchester County, 6 miles from us was ground zero for the first case on the East Coast. And so we were really in the thick of it. And our CEO and the management team took a very proactive approach so that we would not look like an organization that was not being transparent. And we have really changed the way that we sort of, approach messaging. We did more than 300 emails, another 300 recorded calls from our CEO over a 12-month period. That's a lot of communication to give people an update on where things are. So I think those that have made, that kind of decision to do those things will benefit in the long run, because now, we're not the folks that were sort of beaten up by not being transparent. So I think this is the way people will expect it in the future, to know what's going on at all times.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that during this time gave us the opportunity for internally to make some changes inside the operation of the property. I mean, we changed the way we're doing food service, for instance. We're taking the opportunity to go about a different approach to proceeding, which gave us the opportunity. COVID kind of gave us that opportunity to make that change. It's something we've been wanting to do for quite a while, but it was very difficult to kind of stop and pause and make all these changes. But during this pause, we made some great changes in food service that are going to be long-term for us. Again, going back to the changes that it's made in messaging and communicating, I think that the COVID, if I can say anything of what it did to our team members and the people that are providing the services to our residents, it just really brought them together. They're much stronger now than they were. We were communicating a lot more during that period of time, collaborating a lot more, being creative, throwing the problems on the table and saying, hey, look, how do we digest this problem? How do we solve it? And as a result of that, we came out more united, stronger as a unit than we did before. And that will continue to be a part of our culture. It already was, but COVID gave us the opportunity to even enhance that. And it really tested the waters for all of our team members, because we all were involved with the problems and we were all involved with the solutions. And it just really brought a much stronger team together. So it's kind of one of those things that I think that, hey, look, if we can pull together and get through what we did with COVID and the many challenges that it represented, it doesn't scare us too much for the next one when it comes along. We're just now fighting to rebuild occupancy, as we all are. But that's some of the things that we have incorporated that are permanent.
Our next question, what have you learned about the industry, your residents, your prospects, and your staff during this time?
I would say we all have a lot to say about that, right? One major thing that I know we've learned, and I'm sure everybody on the panel is going to say the same thing as far as this component, and hopefully everybody out there who's watching, is how incredibly regulated our communities are, and how the different bodies that govern us are inconsistent. And that makes it very difficult to operate. So for instance, if you're a CCRC or a CCRC-like style community, maybe like ours, which has independent living, assisted living, a nursing home, a memory care center, well, guess what? Independent living goes under the same guidelines as maybe New York State and Department of Health. But then you've got the assisted living who has to go by CDC, the Department of Health, but New York doesn't agree with that. And then the SNF will have CMS, and then they have the Department of Health, and then you still have New York State who might supersede everything that they say. So I feel like one of the things that we really learned, I mean, and this is still going on, a great example of that for anybody who has a nursing home and an assisted living on their campus is we just got guidance this week that guess what? Nursing homes, no more 6-foot distancing for meals anymore, but assisted living still has it. So it's such an odd message. You know, you're really trying to sort of figure out how do we operate each one differently and making sure that we're making, you know, the right decisions. It's very hard to compare our communities because they're not apples to apples. Because me in New York, I have very different regulations than Frank might have where he is, or that Jerry might have in New Jersey. That's another thing we learned when we were trying to put together info with some of our partners. And then I think Richard had said being open. If you want to keep those prospects coming, we learn transparency, number one. You have to allow them to speak to the residents. You have to allow them to talk about what it was like living here during COVID and let them tell their story. And you really have to hold their hand because the sales cycle is longer. And I'm trying to be as fast as possible because there's a lot of panelists.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, I learned a lot. This was one of the most difficult periods in the Osborne's 114-year history. But I learned a lot about resiliency. I learned that our residents are very resilient. They're strong. Folks really were very supportive of not only our staff, but each other. It was amazing to see during a terribly frightening time for many. I think on the staff side, I saw what really meant to be an essential worker. I saw, people early on when we really weren't even sure what this thing was, and how it was being spread. And before there were any guidelines at all, we were, coming into work every day. Many of us who work in this area didn't get the time out of working from home for a year. We were in the trenches, and I learned that our staff are extremely dedicated, caring, and essential workers. And I'm, made me very proud to be part of an organization like the Osborne.
And I just want to say, we have not been here 114 years, Richard and I.
No, we haven't.
You guys are looking good.
The question number 4, what are your plans? What are your plans for moving forward? What does the future look like? And I'll throw that out there to any of the panelists who would like to jump in.
I'll just say one of the things that struck me as we're kind of reflecting back is, while there has been a lot of changes, at the end of the day, when it comes to the sales process, the fundamentals remain the same. It was still always about connecting with our prospects, building value for why they should consider this move or this service. And while we did it different in all those different mediums and challenging times, the core functionality never changed for those who were kind of consistent in the interactions with their prospects. I don't see that changing in the future. I do think that there's this fundamental recipe on building relationships and understanding needs and wants and the emotional motivation and connecting those with the values that you can provide as a service or an offering.
I think that's so well said, Peggy. I think and I think the successful, I think if there was any sales success in the past 15 months, it was probably with sales teams who understood that the best. And they maintained that that consistent communication with their prospects and never kind of took their eye off of that sales process and leading those prospects through it. It may have been longer, that's true, but you're so right on that, spot on, that the fundamental sales and that emotional tie to prospects really hasn't gone away, and I don't see it going away in the future either.
If anything, it's been enhanced by.
That's right.
Yes, I totally agree. Well said, both of you.
I agree with that as well. In fact, our focus of sales is empathy. And going down into the whole with our prospects to understand where they are right now. There's a lot of fear that's surrounded prospects around COVID, a lot of fear of moving into communities that are congregate setting due to the negative press early in the pandemic. And our goal is to reassure them and be there with them. We're finding that we are making positive moves to help people decide to move into a senior living community with that approach.
For our next question, I'm going to put this question to Peggy. Knowing what you know now, what would you have changed or done differently?
Well, you remember I work with providers, and so I'm going to speak on behalf of the providers I was working with. I think we were sometimes behind the ball when it came to our videos and our virtual experiences, and to be able to connect when we no longer could bring people into the buildings. And so historically, we really relied on those face-to-face interactions. And when we couldn't do that, there was a lot of scrambling on doing, which I love, by the way. I love just doing those organic, get your phone out and take a video versus having something overly polished and produced. But we didn't have those in many of the communities. And so they really kind of felt like they couldn't do virtual tours, or they couldn't have these videos that they could put on their website or other, social media platforms. And so photos and those things, then, photographers were cut out. They couldn't come in. So I think moving forward now, if they're open and they have the ability to get those photos updated, to get some videos that they really want to use, don't squander the time right now. Do it, because we never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
The next question, how has this changed your sales and marketing messages or strategy? I'm going to throw that up to Krista or Richard.
So again, for sales, for us, transparency has been key. And I think really along the lines of Peggy and Diane, what you were saying is, more than ever, the empathy, true empathy, that has to come through, right? Because right now they have to trust you. And I'm talking with my hands because I'm Italian, I can't help myself. So they really have to trust you. They have to feel like you care. That's important. So I think when you're talking about the message has to be transparency. Yeah, we have had this happen, but guess what? This is how we emerged. We really have relied on our residents telling their story. So we had people who moved in right in the beginning of the pandemic. And you know what? What we did was I had webinars and I said, guess what? I'm just going to have you guys speak. And those were probably the webinars that I had the most attendees come to. And everybody talked about, here's what it was like. You guys were home worrying about how you're getting groceries, but guess what? I still got mine. I got my medications. Was it hard? It was. They're not going to lie and say it wasn't hard. But I think what it comes down to right now is sales can't be the only person telling the story. That story has to come from everywhere. That story, they don't always want to hear from me. Hey, listen, who wouldn't want to usually listen to me? But that's not who they always want to hear from. They want to know who they're going to live with. They want to know, what are the people like? What was it like for them? Because what if this happens again? I want to know what I'm in for this winter if a new variant comes out. And that messaging has to come from your residents. They have to be able to talk anywhere from your CEO if they want to, all the way down to a housekeeper. So for me, I think that was the biggest sales messaging that we have taken. And guess what? In 3 months, I've had 18 move-ins. So I'd say it's definitely working. And if anybody had questions on who are attending after that for some ideas, always feel free, because we all love to share information with each other. Richard, do you want to add?
Yeah, I would also add, I think we've seen a shift in the messaging that, people are looking for. For years it was, your gourmet dining and your dining venues and your sort of life enrichment activities.
Right.
Now we've gotten really more hard hitting about, in fact, a prospect recently reached out and said, I want to know the information that's not on your website.
Yeah.
I want to know the hard facts, what happened during COVID.
Yep.
So we're seeing a lot more of the, the hard-hitting news kind of thing where they want the facts about, how did we deal with what happened? They want more information about safety, security, emergency protocols, 24-hour guard on campus. They want the things that have completely sort of done a 180 from the amenity-based questions to things that are, much more about safety, security, and well-being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think a lot of us probably talked about during the pandemic, it switched from a soft sell approach, which you were really just talking about things that might be able to help them through the pandemic. And now you're still taking a soft sell, but you're letting them take the lead. So Richard, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, they're asking us those hard questions and you've got to be ready to answer them.
Krista, you touched on something earlier in your answer to that question that I think is so critical. And that is that it's not completely and totally up to the sales team to carry the message forward. That you have to have the operational support and the operational speakers that represent the message of how this was dealt with. And as you said, the sales folks can talk and they can bring that message and it means something, but the reality is, unless you're adding the bench strength of your operators to bring that message forward, it just means something a little bit more. And I think that's so important. And I appreciate that you brought that point forward.
Absolutely. I mean, I will introduce people. My CEO knows if I'm walking down that hall, if my employees are walking down that hall, my salespeople, he knows to stop and talk to them. And they're going to ask him hard questions and he's prepared to answer them. So I think when you're coming from a sales and marketing aspect, they rely so heavily on us. But I think if COVID showed us anything, it's that. I love how you said bench strength. Let's be like the Yankees. You got to have good backup there if you want to win a game. So, we all need to be on the same team. It can't just be left up to sales and marketing.
And our residents and resident family members have been extremely instrumental in carrying that message as well. We've utilized them a lot in all kinds of messaging that we're doing in marketing as well as when we're touring. But these people have really, really helped us and stepped up and really helped get that message out to people.
Definitely. I couldn't agree with you more, Frank.
Yeah, we actually changed our key messages early in the pandemic to shift from an amenities lifestyle-based messaging to prospects to a safety and security message. You're safe with us, you're secure. We take infection control, no matter how unsexy that is, as a sales message. It was one that we communicated and it gave reassurance to our prospect base. And to be quite honest, we're continuing that message in a more ramped down model as we move forward post-pandemic. And who knows, that may be our message moving forward forever.
Right.
I just want to add one other thing on there because, and this is a question I love to see what happens as we move forward, because I think about, when families are in crisis and they come to us, they're looking for certain things that we need to respond to. And I kind of think like we were in crisis as an industry. And so we're responding like where we're talking about safety and security as opposed to amenity. My question is, and I think this is for all of us to come to find out, is the further we get away from this, at what point, or will we start shifting those messages back to amenity? The further you get away from a crisis, we kind of forget and we'll put it aside. And so I want to just be aware of that. Maybe something, as you all are getting insight into that and getting feedback from your customers, I'd love to be able to share more to see, is there this shift in kind of what those customers are really focusing in on that go beyond the safety and security back into the amenity rich, and when that will be.
Let me say something to that, Peggy. I started to mention it early in just decided not to, but unless I'm missing something, over the past probably 3 to 5, maybe 6 months, there really hasn't been a whole lot of discussion with prospects regarding COVID. We're also, for the first time in years, we have a new competitor in town. So it's more about it's more about lifestyle services and amenities now than it is safety. I have to admit, I'm not getting those kinds of messages in our prospects. I'm just not getting it. And it's very little discussion, if any, even on the property itself. And these people now are, when prospects are coming in, they're wanting to know how our services compare with the new guy in town and those kinds of, it's almost like it's redirected their attention away from COVID. And now they're looking at two properties in town kind of competing against one another. We're not hearing a whole lot of that at this point.
Yeah. So maybe more market sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
hedging
was
our
just gonna
bets.
say, depends on where you are.
In case there's another outbreak,
Yeah.
we're set.
You know, I think moving forward, I think it's going to be, you know, I don't think it's going to go away, the safety and security. I think certainly, you know, this is something that we're going to probably be dealing with for quite a long time. And I think it's going to be, you know, sort of melded into those other things. Those things will be important again. I mean, not that they're not important now, but those, you know, those really, you know, down and deep questions that people have, they're more about, you know, about their being, you know, in a place that's safe. And also the key influencers, the kids are asking, you know, tough questions. They're the ones,
Yeah.
you know, they didn't want to, you know, drop the parents off, you know, for assisted living or, you know, so we're dealing with a lot of that. But I think as we move forward, this will be a message for quite some time. I think it may not be the first thing as it is right now, but I think it will be mixed in with the amenity-based messaging in the future.
Yeah, and they're definitely, listen, I just had clients, I'm sorry if you heard them in the background, that were with my staff, and they were just asking, can I come to one of the activities? So I think it's a balance. And again, it's going to depend on where you are, but it also depends on what levels of care you're dealing with. You know, if you have independent living, I still say those people still want lifestyle. Yes, they want safety and security, but they're going to look more at that if you're assisted living than maybe an independent. They want to be safe and secure, but I think they're assuming at this point you're safe and secure, but now they want to get back to a lifestyle. So I think you have to be able to sort of balance that a little bit.
Good.
The next question, how do you think the sales and marketing staff have been affected for staffing issues? Peggy, I'm going to direct that to you.
Well, you know, when we talked about this a year ago, we know that the sales and marketing staff, many of them had to take their hats off and put a different hat on. And what I'm hearing now is, while we were able to put our sales and marketing hat back on, really kind of last summer, like late summer, we started putting it back on. It's in a hybrid mode, and it's always been had to flex. I mean, I have a community right now, just spoke with her this week, and they're back in a 2-week lockdown because of a positive test. They don't have the kiosk at the front desk. They don't have the automatic, you know, temperature screening. So somebody is there, and often she's there screening people and taking temperatures. So being very adaptable and having to kind of move with where you're at day to day is still kind of I think the challenge for sales and marketing, to be able to go back and resume, you know, normal activities.
I concur with that. It's been a transition for sure to get back into the rhythm of sales when they've been wearing so many hats prior to this. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I, you know, to sort of take this conversation a little bit further in terms of the salespeople wearing different hats and then really attempting to get back into, you know, the sales seat and work in the sales zone to advance leads. You know, I think it's an opportunity for operators to extend some appreciation to the sales teams, because certainly no one carries the burden of low census or low sales more than sales leaders and sales counselors in these communities. And so I think it's an opportunity, probably right now is the window for operators to sort of recognize that and let them know that how much they're appreciated, and help them realize that as operators, you understand that they feel the pinch when sales aren't going in the direction that we all want them to. So.
Absolutely, Jerry. Appreciation is really important right now. And there's a lot, there's a lot of people who have actually left the industry because of the pressure.
Mhm.
And I continue
That's
to
right.
see that. And, it's not one person that created this crisis, and one person in one department can't bring us out of it. And so recognizing that and providing a little grace and support and encouragement, I think will go a long way.
Well said, Peggy.
Yep, I agree.
Well said.
The next question for your general thoughts on the future. What does the future of senior living look like? And I'm going to throw that out to Jerry to start.
Quite honestly, I think we are climbing out of this. I'm super optimistic about the future in terms of sales and occupancy and growth. I know that just in our portfolio, we have operators who have given green lights on new construction and repositionings and things like that. And so I'm optimistic. I think the numbers that we're seeing recently support my optimism, and I think we're full speed ahead.
From an industry standpoint, kind of getting outside and looking at it from property growth and property changes. Give an example. I was talking to a company just last month, and they were a 18 or $19 billion company. And during COVID, they dropped to $8 billion. And the $8 billion was generated from the business they were doing with senior housing. So now they've converted their model to focus on servicing senior housing. And the phrase was, it is pandemic proof. So from a global standpoint, I think you're going to see a change in our model to some degree, as far as how it looks and what amenities are being offered because of the different age groups that we're servicing. But I do also believe that it is an awesome business to still be in for all of us who are out there and have struggled and have gone through all of this. It's still a great business to be in and has a great future. I believe that it's here to stay. It's going to change from generation to generation, but it is certainly a mainstay, and I think it's going to be around for a little bit.
I think right now, one of the big question marks is resources in terms of staff. And, I work in new construction as well, and we've started to see new construction come back. However, now trying to find resources, and you see the price of lumber, I see construction slowing down, if not stalling, trying to, doors are on back order, everything's on back order. And so I think we might see some blips here from resourcing, both human resources as well as supplies. But I think that it's not going anywhere. I think if anything, we're going to just start, through the adversity comes growth, and so the technology changes, everything that's going to help us just get better in the future. I think we're primed to tap into that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Frank. You go ahead, Frank.
And I, just to add one more thing, I talked to several business owners or companies who are now they've got funding to go out and purchase properties, not to build, like you said, Peggy, because of the demand problem that we've got. But now they're trying to look and see, hey, look, are there some properties out there that's in trouble that it can be purchased at a discount? That's a big string of conversation and dialogue is also going on now. It's very difficult to build, but now they're looking to buy other properties.
I mean, I know in our market, Richard, you and I know for the competitive market, I'm happy to say that the people who were in sort of building mode and starting to do their sales and marketing had to put it off for a year and a half. However, what we're seeing now is they're in 100% go mode at this point in time. I do think we're going to see a lot of them who are thinking about, we had one CCRC who already dropped skilled nursing. I think you're going to see, and I forgot who mentioned it, if it was Jerry or Frank, I think you're going to see a lot of communities or newer communities try to stay towards that independent or just be a 55 plus with concierge services because they don't want to have to deal with all the regulations. And when you have a mixed community, you go by the highest regulation, and that's what creates a lot of those discrepancies and a lot of the issues we had been talking about from the beginning.
I agree. I'm actually today in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, meeting with team members here at our community. And we had a discussion this morning that the perceived growth area is in independent living because it is not a regulated model. And a number of providers in this market are looking to build new construction for independent townhomes and apartment buildings that are age restricted. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity in the future. I think our industry has a bright future ahead of it. I do think a number of smaller operators are probably going to be for sale if they had a very, very tough time during COVID, with financial feasibility. But I don't know, I agree with everyone. I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there and we're here to stay, and it's only going to get better.
I'm happy to say that was the final question for our panel today. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mona. Mona, I'm going to go ahead and let you have the stage.
What a treat. Wow, you guys are awesome. I hope you guys all enjoyed hearing from the panelists as much as I did. I scribbled a ton of notes. I am very encouraged by the optimism among the panelists. Yes, there have been a lot of challenges in staffing and vulnerability and ability to communicate, but I heard such encouraging themes of being in recovery. Our teams came out stronger than they were before. Transparency, the focus of sales shifting to empathy, the innovation in communicating, whether it's telling stories by different staff members, using webinars, videos, those kind of things, and the way you've shifted their messaging from amenities to safety and then back to amenities in the South. So that was awesome. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I want to say a very special thank you to our panelists. You guys made it so valuable. Would not have been the same without any of you. So grateful that you are able to take time and share it with us today. And again, for anyone who's listening, if you have any questions for our panelists, that obviously we didn't have a lot of time for Q&A, or if you have a question for someone on the Advantage Anywhere team, or hey, if you loved hearing from these panelists and you'd like to hear them address another topic, shoot it to us. I'd love to do this again with you guys. Put it in the chat. We'll be in touch. Thanks again for joining us today, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.